We were supposed to have a call from Bob Chapman. He hasn't called in yet, so we're going to open up the lines right away. If you'd like to call us at 1-800, I should say 1-888-24-LIBERTY. 1-888-24-LIBERTY or 464-8295. But let me point out a couple of fascinating things from the latest international forecaster, which I've read over the weekend. One of them is that they have some legislation they're considering sending it to the Senate, and it has to do with the fact that some of the selfish people in our country are raiding their pension funds, their IRAs, their 401ks, because they don't trust the government. They're raiding their pension funds, and so what they want to do is roll the private pension funds over into Social Security. That way the government could look after them and, of course, make sure the funds are spent properly. And so they're going to be considering and debating whether simply to roll all of the pension funds over into the Social Security, where the government then can look after your money, your retirement money, and make sure it's spent properly. And I will tell you, this is exactly what they've done in Argentina. The government is frantic for money. You see, they're having to borrow over $5 billion a day. Increasingly, other countries will not loan to us because, of course, they know we are monetizing our debt. What does that mean when you say you're monetizing your debt? Well, it means you're actually printing money, and of course then you're lending it to yourself. It's like pulling yourself up with your own bootstraps. It's a little hard to get your feet off the ground that way. But what we're doing, we're lending money or creating money out of nothing. We're lending it to foreign central banks so that they can intervene and buy our treasury bonds and our agency bonds. We are making that money available to the major banks. Now, you and I couldn't do this, but they can. They can go then to the Federal Reserve System and borrow money at 0% interest, and then they can go into the Treasury bond market, and they can buy Treasury bonds at 3.5%. 3.75%, and pocket the difference between 0% and 3.75% interest. You borrow $100 million, $500 million. That's pretty good profit. You're not risking anything. All you have to do is pay back the money you borrowed. But now you've got these bonds that are going to pay you a fantastic sum of money, and but the other countries throughout the world know what's going. The average American doesn't understand what's happening, but of course the other countries do, and they are beginning to very quietly try to get out of Treasury bonds because they know that we're on a one-way road to default on our debt. In fact, Japan is facing a default on its debt. Why? Because basically it can't meet its obligations to its people, its Social Security, Medicare system, safety net is actually collapsing. Well, let's go to George, who's calling from Indiana. We don't have our callers, so our telephone number is 1-888-24-LIBERTY. 1-888-24-LIBERTY or 464-8295. It's going to be open lines, but if you would like to talk about whatever you want to. And we have George with us right now, calling from Indiana. Hi, George. How are you doing? I hope you don't have any money in a 401k or an IRA, because the government thinks they can manage your money far better than you can.
I wouldn't let them take care of my dog if I was going on a one-day vacation.
God, okay. Hang on there, we'll be right. Certainly Joseph Stiglitz. Well, this is Dr. Stan, and certainly we have waiting for our friend Bob Chapman to call in. We have Jim calling from West Virginia. He said over the weekend that Jim Marrs had told them that the Afghan wars, that the war over there in Iraq and Afghan has cost us $3 trillion. It hasn't cost us that yet. It will cost us that down the line, at least according to Joseph Stiglitz, who's a Nobel Prize-winning economist who's written a book called The $3 Trillion War. And what he's basically saying is, based upon the money that we've spent the money we're going to have to, because we're doing most of this with borrowed money, so we're going to have to pay interest on the borrowed money. The ultimate weapons that we've destroyed are going to have to be replaced. And then, of course, the care of the veterans down the line. It'll cost us $3 trillion for this war so far, and there's no end in sight, because the truth of the matter is, we don't want to win the war. Our boys do. Our boys are fighting bravely. Our military is fighting bravely, but we're financing the Pakistani government that's financing the Pakistani intelligence that's financing Al-Qaeda, that are killing our boys over there, and the Taliban that's killing our boys. It's like Vietnam all over again. But the average American can't believe that. But I think it's a terrible crime, Jim. I share your concern. We've actually killed about 1,000 Iraqis. There are 1,000 Iraqi widows who weep every night. 5,000 Iraqi orphans. Those figures come from the shoe bomber, the mad shoe thrower, the fellow who threw the shoes at George Bush. And he wrote an essay. You can find it up on the Internet. And I think it's one of the great tragedies. And one day America is going to be sorely punished, because the American people haven't had the courage to stand up and say, these are immoral wars. And, of course, maybe we ought to consider why we went to war with Afghanistan when it was Saudi Arabians who attacked us, not Afghans. But go ahead, Jim.
Well, I've heard figures like we murdered like 2.5 million. I don't remember. But Lance it up.
I would say the figure is probably close to about 1 million Iraqis have died. I don't know how many Afghans have died. An awful lot of people have died, and they're lying to us about it because they don't want the American people to feel bad about all the people who've been killed unnecessarily.
That's $3 million a corpse then. Well, I wouldn't pay $3 million for one of those corpses.
No,
and I asked myself, how much should he pay? His life. But get ready, folks, because we're next, because they're going to use the same techniques they're using over there on us.
Well, when the nuclear war comes, I fear you may be right. Hey, we got Bob Chapman on the line. Thanks for calling, Jim. Appreciate your call. And hi, Bob. How are we doing?
Well, doing great. I apologize for being late, but I had a little old lady in Canada on the phone, and she was very talkative, and so I couldn't get off quick enough.
Bob, you've got to learn what to do under those circumstances. Give me a call off air, and I'll tell you what, because I get those calls all the time, and they're very nice, but sometimes you just have to say, I'm sorry, but I got to go. Anyway, I was just commenting on something I read in your International Forecaster that sent chills down my spine. Now, not that I have anything in a retirement fund, because I don't. But so you commented that they're considering legislation to actually take the pension funds, the IRAs, and the 401ks, and roll them over into Social Security. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Well, they started talking about it a year and 2 months ago, and they had people come to Congress, to the subcommittee, and talk about it, and that was a very, very strongly proposed proposal. Now, nothing has been done in committee since then that I'm aware of, but there is another bill that probably is going to be submitted, and in this environment, I would say that in all probability it will be voted upon. And that is to change the rules on 401ks, not to let people borrow against them. If they do, there'll be penalties.
Oh, I think the term they use is raided. The people shouldn't have the right to raid their account and get their own money. Go ahead.
Yeah, raiding your own account. Give me a break. But, that's the attitude. The Illuminists, the Brotherhood of Darkness. Incidentally, I mentioned that book today on another radio program.
Good, thank you so much.
I recommended it. And incidentally, Charles Goyette is coming out with a new book. You probably saw the piece I put in the publication on it. Charles used to be with ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, or something like that. And I used to be on his program all the time. And then very mysteriously, he wasn't there anymore, and he wrote me a note and said they didn't renew my contract. And, of course, he talks about things like you and I do, so it's no wonder he didn't get renewed. And he wrote a book. And so you might take a look at it. I understand it's very good.
Is the book out yet?
I think maybe it is.
Well,
there's a date in there. And it's a place to go to. But he's a very nice, very knowledgeable person.
Well, if you could
and
maybe...
you know me, if somebody is a good person, I'm going to recommend their book. Some of these people contact me and tell me they'll pay me, and I said, no, we don't accept money for anything.
Well, if you wouldn't mind,
we help you, that's all the best.
If you can just email me the name of the book or something like that.
Yeah, I will.
Have Judy go ahead and email it to me, and we'll look it up and get it on Amazon, and maybe we get them on our program. Because anybody who does a good book, we want to help them get it distributed, especially if they're telling the truth. Right.
He's wonderful in the air. He's been on Lou Dobbs at least 10 times I've seen him.